I knew this was going to happen. As soon as Lane and I finished the video talking about Deathwatch and Grey Knights and where they are and the state of the game and our feeling on them and just our general opinion about them, I told Lane, I'm like, as soon as we put this video up, the data slates are going to hit. And I've been holding off. I've been holding off for a bit just because I didn't want to review some of the stuff with Necrons and all that until the data slates hit, because something would change and I didn't want it to discredit a video or any content that I was trying to put out here and bring out here on the channel. So I waited, I held off as long as I could. Lane and I got together, recorded a video, put it up there, and as soon as I posted, I knew it. I had it feeling in my bones that was going to mean the data slates were going to hit. And sure enough, we got data slates, we got points, we got rules, we have an entire landscape change to Warhammer 40K. Welcome back, all my 40K fanatics out there. I'm DJ here with Tim's Nation, and today we're just going to go through casually all the updates in the Ministrum field manual, the balanced data slates, the rules commentary, all the stuff in just kind of a casual way. There are a lot of channels out there that have very comprehensive breakdowns of what we have seen. And here we focus on Necrons, we focus on Grey Knights, we focus on some of that stuff. And I'm going to give you my first take on this. Now, I've had the whole day coming off of a work day to kind of garnish an opinion, have some time to sit down and think about it. And it's kind of one of the styles of how I like to sometimes put out these videos is take a little bit of time, really think about it, let it digest, and then start to discuss it and see how it makes me feel, and then in response hear from you guys on how some of these things make you guys feel. Maybe there are certain directions that I didn't notice that the rules went through, and that's kind of cool to see, and see all these different combinations and how things more or less are going to pan out. A lot of good stuff, some rough stuff. Eldar got smacked pretty hard, but we're just going to jump right into it. Like I said, this is not going to be a detailed every single change that has occurred. It's going to be a gloss over it, but we're going to do a good amount of research. We're going to talk about some good stuff in here and give a good amount of it going out there. But if your favorite faction gets glazed over, I do apologize. I want to kind of just give this a casual first feel perspective so that we can start a conversation to, again, have some great content and great videos later on as we continue to unpack everything from the January update. For those of you who haven't already, please subscribe to the channel, turn on the bell to get notified on all the content that we bring you here on the channel, including a lot more going forward with Deathwatch, Grey Knights, Death Guard, and a whole slew of other armies that we'll get some time to sit down and talk about them one-on-one. Today, we're going to talk about the data slates and what happened today. And if you're new to 40K, Games Workshop in previous editions had a trend of putting out codexes and then nerfing them or restricting them or FAQing them way too quickly. This caused people to get a little upset. They would spend a lot of money on certain armies and factions and just build this whole force, and then all of it wouldn't work, down to the sense of a casual level even, where some of these builds just cease to function anymore. And this was not good. It was not healthy for the game. So Games Workshop has made a promise and commitment to not do that and allow things to kind of resolve for a bit. So every 6 months, this is what we see, where we have updates, point changes, clarifications on rules, maybe even modifications on rules in some restraints. And that's what dropped today. So let's just jump right into it. There's a lot to unpack. A lot has changed. Now, if you're trying to follow along with me and look at some of the stuff, I'm going to start off with the rules commentary portion. I'll give you guys a couple seconds if you want to pull that up and follow along with me on kind of some of this. The rules commentary is basically just on the focus rules, the rules of Warhammer 40K, the main rule book, and how some of these things may need more definition and more clarity. The first thing that we pop up in red is talking about abilities with the same name. This is old. just how they function, and if you have abilities with the exact same name, can it affect a unit multiple times, and how that works. Abilities with the same name can affect units multiple times, but if such ability applies a named condition to it, suppressed, that condition can only affect the target unit once at a given time. So there's a couple different things that kind of fall into that category, but this was an older change. Adding models to unit. Now, this is an important one because this matters for Necrons. Some rules allow you to add models to units, and in the red, it says models added to units that is on the battlefield must be set up in unit coherency with models that in that unit that started the phase on the battlefield. Okay, that was a change prior, and that's a big Necron thing. We still have the ability to daisy chain, but you need to trigger additional abilities to be able to do that outside of phase. Like, they have to be in different phases because models started the phase. So yeah, so you have to trigger it over the course of phases, but there's still ways to do it, just not as crazy as it would be if you're just placing 1, 1, 1 and just lining up across the field, which was something we could do in previous editions. Models added to units that are not currently on the battlefield do not have to meet this requirement. Now we are allowed to place models into units in reserve, which was something that was changed before. This is important for the Hypercrypt Dynasty, where it's the only stratagem that it has to reanimate models is one that allows it to reanimate in reserve, whereas the reanimation rule itself in the Codex disallows reanimation in reserve. So now we can reanimate in the reserve. It looks like you can add models to the unit, so everything in there is pretty cool. Arriving from strategic reserve in the first battle round. This allows the unit to be set up in your first, second, or third movement phase. Use the strategic reserve rules. Treat the current battle round number as being one higher than it actually is in the first battle round only, unless explicitly stated otherwise. Now, I heard somebody say this, and I didn't comment on this. This was in a Facebook group saying that, oh, so you can then bring your units from strategic that in this fashion on turn 2 in your opponent's half of the field. That's false. The last part of this is this only applies to battle round 1, and this applies to Hypercrypt and the Night Scythe in a lot of ways for Necrons. The Night Scythe has the ability to arrive on the first battle round, but there's no rules for how to treat it. Now you can. The question still comes up about Hypercrypt and being able to pick up units that don't have Deep Strike keyword to bring them on the battlefield. And that's going to be a TO thing, and that's going to be a question for a while until we do get an official wording on it. My reading is that the Leviathan packet, which typically most tournaments play by, is the one that states that units that start on the table can disregard the rule for not being able to come in on the first battle round. And that is the last part of it where it actually does state, except for units that have started the game on the battlefield. So I'm still of the camp that you now can, because now there are strategic reserve rules for bringing them on turn 1. So because of that, and because the unit started on that turn, I believe that you can. And I feel like this is the rule that helps to change it. Then we have some rules on Battle Shock, which I'm pretty sure those were the old ones. And then we go down into some rule commentary about shooting, charge bonus for getting first to fight. And then I feel like all of this was all here before with the damage characteristics, CP gain to the start of the command phase. If there was ever a question about abilities and the discarding card, here it is. You can't do both. You can't discard a card and use a army ability to gain CP. Those are not allowed. But yeah, I mean, everything else I think was pretty much here before. Abilities that instruct players to not make an advanced roll, but instead increase movement character specified. Abilities also instruct players to not make an advanced roll unit. In such instances, controlling agreements choose. Oh, okay. I thought that was going to be on like something for the advance. Yeah, it seems like everything else here is what it was. And there wasn't too many changes. There might be something in there that I missed. If there is a big point to the rules that I missed with these, please let me know in the comments section. But that's not what we're here for. So let's jump over into the juicy, and we'll talk a little bit about the points at the same time with this, because some of this is going to matter in those sense. We'll go through the points afterwards as well too, but not fully. Again, it's just going to be a quick scan through and kind of give a general summary of what happened to those factions. But the big one, the balanced data slate. This is the big daddy of it all. So if you guys, again, if you're following along with me, I'll give you a second to pull that one up. But the balanced data slate is where the rules actually change. This is the biggest impact to how units will function. Now to the sense of seeing weapons even being modified in here as well too. And there's some goodies, and then there's some baddies, depending on the factions and armies you play and face off against. So there are a couple things that are here from the old ones that we see in red, like the devastating wound change, the change to insane bravery, overwatch, not being able to overwatch units you can't see. So some of that's all the same. Adeptus Sororitas did get, is that plus have been newly added or revised. So going through this, some of the armies I don't typically play. There is definitely a little bit of a boost to Custodes, and a little bit of a boost and nerf, I guess, to changing with Custodes and how they function. Unit compositions changing, it looks like. I don't know if that was here before. I don't pay too much attention to Custodes. They're kind of off my radar in a lot of ways. It looks like the Aegis Emperor detachment models in this army have the Feel No Pain 4-up ability against mortal wounds and critical wounds caused by attack. So that's a big one. So now they can feel no pain but devastating wounds. And it looks like that's new. So that's pretty cool. Aeldari, they got smacked hard. We're going to come back to them. Chaos Space Marines. They tweaked so many different things in this army, as well as increase the points of like the accursed cultists and everything like that. Like Chaos, it's going to be interesting to see if they really can still be as strong as they've been moving forward. Again, they haven't topped the meta, but a lot of people are concerned. Chaos Demons got hit as allies really hard for no reason at all. They weren't doing anything. I'm very surprised by that. Death Guard pretty much left the same. The grenade strat got modified, it looks like. In your shooting phase, you can select one model from your army with this ability and target grenade strat. You can do so even if you already used it. Each model can only be selected for this ability once. So you can only do it this one time. I'm not sure where the big changes there. Grey Knights, we're going to talk about them. But for the most part, not to like Necrons, untouched. Admech, untouched. As much as Hypercrypt did very well, I'm glad to see this. Hypercrypt did extremely well. Matt ran that army and took LVO. Can't take that away from him. But it also is a testament to now the meta is going to shift. People are going to be planning for Hypercrypt, Grey Knights, and stuff like that, and are going to start to put in units that can kind of zone out that 3-inch deep strike and prevent the Hypercrypt from running as heavy as it was. Right now, Matt caught the entire meta with its pants down, and there was no defense against it. There are defense that exists in armies. And that's going to be the question is that defense enough? But before we go making changes, the codex needs to sit a little bit. Like, let this simmer. Yeah, there's some new stuff that people aren't ready for and prepared for, but does that mean that it's overpowered? Or are we just unaware of it and unable to fully address it on the tabletop at this time? And I think that the latter is true. I think that what Necrons do is very good and very strong and makes them a formidable faction. But we're going to be getting more codexes. We're going to see more detachments. All that might not stand up. And if you go and slaughter the codex so early now, then as these books come out, Necrons aren't going to be able to compete. So let's talk about the big hitters then. So I'm kind of scanning through this and scrolling through and trying, and I see a couple different changes. And some of them, honestly, don't mean as much to me because I don't play those factions as heartily. But let's talk about Eldar. Let's talk about how bad they got smacked in this. So, for those who don't know, Eldar is an army that if you don't want to play this game and roll dice, you play Eldar because you can basically turn your dice into sixes as you go over the game. You got a D cannon that you want to hit devastating wounds, throw a Fate dice in the pool. You want your Wraith cannon to do the same, throw a Fate dice in the pool. You want to guarantee that you hit with a high-powered weapon in Overwatch, throw a Fate dice in the pool. You want to make sure that you make that invulnerable save so your model doesn't die. You seeing the trend here? The Eldar have a lot of abilities with their Fate dice. And the Fate dice system is you roll dice before the game, and you set that dice pocket aside, and that is dice that you can then shimmy in for dice rolls over the course of the game. The Farseer allows you to take one of those dice per battle round, I believe, and it might even be turn, and automatically make it into a 6. So you can take your 1s, 2s, and 3s and turn them into 6s. Now, they were starting with 12 dice. Now this has been cut down to 6. I will tell you, from the other side of the table, looking over at a pool of Aeldari Fate dice and just seeing what they have is just sometimes so discouraging, because then you get hit with these things and hit with these abilities and these 6s and dev wounds, and you feel it, and you feel like you're getting hit, and they're throwing Fate dice at you from all different corners, and you look over and you say, so how many Fate dice do you have? And then they lift up their hand and you see this just pocket of them still there, and it's just like, I feel like none of them even went away. Now, with it only being 6 dice, that means a couple of things. One, a lot of those dice are going to be low rolls. And yes, the Farseer can modify them, but can't modify all of them, which means you're not going to have those pocket 5s and 6s to hold on to late into the game because you're going to need to use them. Now, Eldred gives you 3 additional Fate dice. Guardians give you Fate dice. And I believe there's one other way to be able to gain Fate dice over the course of the game. So you can gain these dice, but you have to work for them. As opposed to right now, where you're just here, you're playing Eldar, here's 12 dice. And you're going to roll a couple 5s and 6s. It's going to happen. Not to mention the fact that you can drop down to 11 and roll them again, reducing yourself, basically giving yourself a mulligan in that sense. So that, I think, is going to definitely help wean it down. I like the Fate dice system. I think it's cool. I think it's unique. I just think it's too exhausting on the opponent that you feel like it never ends and you're just constantly dealing with controlled gun lines all game long. Phantasm stratagem got modified as well too. So the Phantasm stratagem, basically at the end of your movement phase, you move your entire guys, you do your reinforcement, you say, all right, I'm going to shoot. And your opponent goes, no, you're not. I'm going to spend a command point and I'm going to pick an infantry unit and move it 7 inches. Particularly obnoxious with warp spiders. Warp spiders being able to jump up in your face, drill you with just with their flamer style weapons, and then jump behind a wall and not get shot at. Particularly annoying with them. Now, you still only target infantry, but it's D6. So you roll a 1 or a 2. This is probably something that you can Fate dice, maybe. You roll a 1 or 2, you're not getting away. So I like that. I feel like maybe it should have went the other route of like a lot of other abilities where wherever you end up landing or resolving your movement then dictates whether they can move away or not. But okay, makes it a little less powerful. And then the Night Spinner, instead of it cutting the distance, instead of cutting the movement in half, it's doing subtract 2 from the advance and move characteristic and charges. Okay. And then we have, there is one other big change. We have the Yin Karn. The Yin Karn, once in each of your turns, this model can leave the battlefield, blah, blah, blah. So basically the Yin Karn, as an ability, inevitable death ability. Whenever a unit dies, friendly or enemy, the Yin Karn can pick up and just go there, as close to that spot as possible, legally, within an inch. And this means that you, at this previously, the Yin Karn gets aggressive and attacks, but if you go and shoot at anything else in your opponent's army, and try and present a threat anywhere else on the field, that Yin Karn can jump away. So this means that the Yin Karn really doesn't have a suffering point for how it's ever going to get hit. With the change, now it is in each of your turns, specifically says your turns. So now the Eldar player can only pick up the Yin Karn and move it when it's their turn at once. This does still mean that they can eliminate a unit on the field, and bring the Yin Karn there and charge that turn, which is still a very devastating, very vicious hit. But now that means the Yin Karn is there during your turn. And if you can't exactly answer it right at that moment, at least it's staying there. And if you do have other work that needs to be done, it's not going to go fly away. And that's one of the issues that I had with it that hit me personally, was it being able to fly away. Not saying an issue that I knew what it could do. I messed it up. But that was definitely a nail that hit hard. World Eaters. So I've been working on and getting ready to get World Eaters here on the channel. Been working pretty hard on them. And as fast as it went into my shopping cart is as fast as it comes out of my shopping list. I'm blessed that I only had a brief love with the Demon Prince of Khorne. I looked at his data sheet and saw he gives a 4-up invuln. He's amazing. 200 points, a little pricey, but a 4-up invuln aura? That's amazing. Now it's a 5-up. And I also looked at the Berserker Glaive and thought, ooh, that's real cool. I'm going to put that on a Juggernaut. That got nerfed too. And talking about points in here as well, the 8-bound and the Exalted 8-bound went up in points. I can understand the Exalted 8-bound going up in points. I'm kind of surprised the regular 8-bound did, because I'm still looking at them and waiting for an aspect that really separates the 8-bound and the Exalted 8-bound and gives a reason to take the standard 8-bound. And aside from, well, they're cheaper, I don't see much player-ish or area where I'd want to take those over the Exalted. Let me know in the comments section. Probably something there I'm missing, but that's kind of how I feel right now. So World Eaters just got smacked with a couple of things for no reason. I get the fact that they're basically playing like Magic the Gathering Red Deck wins. If you go first, you just steamroll across the table. Okay, they're World Eaters. That's what they do. Until we get more kits for the army, that's where you're going to be stuck at. And I personally, I understand that World Eaters actually have a lot of access to different units, Helldrakes, Mauler Fiends, Hellbrutes, things like that. But personally, if I'm playing World Eaters, right, which I am, I want to use their specific stuff first before dipping into all this other stuff. Because you would hope over time some of that stuff would build up and eventually, maybe some of the stuff will get siphoned out. So going after like a Mauler Fiend is great. I would really prefer to stay away from that if I could. Mauler Fiend is the right one. The one with the guns. The one with the guns is the one I'm talking about. Just kind of stay away from some of that stuff. Like Predator tanks look pretty good. But getting into the collection of it now, I don't feel really safe purchasing Predator tanks for Chaos in any which shape or capacity with how they've kind of been treated in Space Marines. So, I know we don't have like the repulsor grav tank and stuff like that, so maybe they will still have some love, but I don't know. It just doesn't feel like they're going to get as much support. So I'm not as crazy to go jump and buy those things for this army and build and paint them, when I'd rather be going at the specialized stuff, but I don't want to just have 60 Khorne Berserkers, So That's how I kind of feel with that. I'm just kind of surprised that the 8-bound themselves went up in points and not just the Exalted, to try to give kind of a reason for why we'd want to run 8-bound over Exalted. And last for the data sheets that I will talk about is the Grey Knights. This is going to be interesting. And I am so excited to put this on the table. So it's a bittersweet reward because there is an answer to the damage that we've all been asking for, and they gave it to us. At the same time, it does kind of bother me that we're just jumping back to the Dread. We're hitting the Dread Knight well again. In the last couple of editions, it always feels like as Grey Knights move through the edition, the way Games Workshop tries to fix them is push the Dread Knight more. And it bothers me because we have some really cool lore-based units with some of the infantry of Grey Knights and their demon hunting capabilities, but we end up just getting right back on Dread Knights over and over again. The difference between this edition and last edition is I really felt like 9th edition was slow for the Grey Knights. I felt like they had some movement tricks, but they weren't reliable. The psychic powers were very unreliable. So it was difficult to fully commit to a damage-based army when your psychic powers were very unreliable. I mean, a command point and a 4-up and you deny it. So I didn't like how Grey Knights played in 9th edition. I felt like it was very soft. I felt like they had a very strong psychic defense, but that wasn't necessary in the game or the meta. This edition, I love how Grey Knights play. I've had so much fun playing them. They teleport around. Their psychic powers are reliable. They're trustworthy. There's a lot in there. Yes, your librarian can hurt himself. Okay. And speaking of which, librarian went up 10 points. So, that's just, he's popping up in every list. That's going to happen when a certain unit is that popular. And 10 points really ain't that bad. Honestly, that's not too much. We can handle that. So what we got as a bonus, though, is boost to the Nemesis Dread Knights. Now, Hollowed in Soulfire is a strategic ploy now, so we cannot reduce that on the Grandmaster, but that's okay. Instead, we're going to get the weapons profiles for the Nemesis Demon Hammer. Now is a weapon skill 3 instead of weapon skill 4. However, it did lose devastating wounds. So, hits better, but no dev wounds. Okay, not the end of the world. I'd rather have it hit better. I'd rather not be hitting on 4s with it. That makes me feel better. The sword hitting on 2s. So what I like about the sword characteristic on a Grandmaster specifically, and I'm going to run one like this, is now I feel like the sword has value. Hitting on 2s is really nice. The Grandmaster has that ability to be able to, once per game or once per battle round, they can reduce a stratagem if it targets the Grandmaster himself. So the devastating wound strat, which I'm eluding its name right now, I'm trying to pull that up, that's a battle tactic. So now with the Radiant Strike is what it's called. So now with that Grandmaster's boosted, let's get down to him real quick, actually, since I got him up here. With that Grandmaster Dread Knight's boosted ability to have the full rerolls, because once per battle round in the fight phase, one model in your army with this ability can use this before resolving an attack. If it does, until the end of the time, each time your model makes an attack that targets a monster or vehicle, you can reroll the hit roll, you can reroll the wound roll, and reroll the damage roll. So what makes this interesting in a couple different aspects? I guess the Dreadhammer didn't have devastating wounds. Now I'm looking at it. Never lost it. I thought it had it. So what makes this interesting is that with the Greatsword on the sweep attacks, getting 10 attacks off this thing and hitting on 2s now instead of hitting on 3s, we're looking at a weapon that can trigger into devastating wounds easier off that stratagem. Spend a single command point instead of two. Now, not always necessary, but when you run into some of the things that have a good invuln, but they're only one wound and lower toughness, that could be that's actually play. That has play. That's playable. You can still proc it for the Demon Hammer or for the Massive Strike profile as well. Having the full rerolls is great. Rerolling the damage is great as well. So there's a lot more play behind the Grandmaster. He'll probably be one that is more teleporting around the field, where other Dread Knights can advance and shoot and charge and all that stuff. So having the other Dread Knights on the field. And yes, I'm talking about multiple Dread Knights. It is 955 points right now for 3 Nemesis Dread Knights and 3 Grandmasters. I have mine kitted out right now. I have 3 Dread Knights with Psy Cannons, 2 Silencer, and 1 with an Incinerator. All 3 Dread Knights have Hammer for that beastly tank shock. My Grandmasters, one of them has a Hammer, Psy Cannon, Silencer. The other one is a Sword, Psy Cannon, Silencer. I went with a 1 Incinerator because I will probably still bring my Purifiers in this list. And I like that 1 Incinerator for the Overwatch capability is really nice. But the Psy Cannon's where it's at. The Psy Cannon, we've said we need damage. We need something that can do some damage because we have no damage. And they gave us this heavy Psy Cannon. So first of all, the heavy Psy Cannon is strength 10. So that means it's wounding Terminators on 2s. T5 units, 2s. It is 6 shots, hitting on 3s. Strength 10, AP 2, flat 3 damage, ignore cover. That ignore cover aspect is so good. There's so many times that is going to be so helpful. I am so happy to see that. So this is a gun. This is a gun. Now, obviously, you say, oh, you know what? There's other guns in the game. There's this gun, that gun. These guns do so much better. This is still a talking point of a very, very good gun. 6 shots, hitting on 3s, wounding most likely on 2s, and then if you're going at vehicles, okay, you're wounding, medium class and lower vehicles, you're wounding on 3s and 4s. And then when you get to the heavyweight vehicles, yes, you're wounding them on 5s, but now you're ignoring cover and your AP2. So if Marines want an AOC to reduce that AP, okay, it's AP1, but then they can't pop smoke or utilize cover, so you're still at least putting them on a 4-up versus some of those vehicles and tanks. Again, we do still lack the big, heavy-hitting tank damage output stuff in there, but this is much better than what we had. This is so much better than what we had in multiple of these guns. Oh, man, I'm definitely... yeah, you definitely will see on the channel here pretty soon a 5 Dread Knight list, and we'll see how that does. But I have a good feeling that that's going to be bouncing around the table, and we're probably going to see a lot more of that from Grey Knights in the near future. So the only other thing to really scan over real quick, and we'll finish out the video with this, we're going to go over the points and talk points. And I know, like I said, there's probably some aspects and some important things that I may have missed. Please let me know down in the comment section, and we can address those in future videos and talk about those more. But let's finish up with the points. Scrolling through every faction and giving just comp plus minus. Adeptus Sororitas, a couple things went up, a couple things went down. Exorcist up, Acroflagellants up, Morgan Vol went up, and then Paragon Warsuits down, Zephyrum Squad down, Retributors down, that's scary, Repentia down. So just all around, like we said, just some basic balancing, nothing too crazy out of there. A little scared when I see Repentia going down, or Repentia going down in points. I never like to see that, but some of it's just popularity. I know Morgan Vol's a monster, so there's that. Custodes of anything that was changed went down, so these armies are going to get a little bit bigger here with Custodian Guard and Wardens and stuff. Those all went down. Aloris Custodes, you can now take them a little more compartmentalized. You still take a minimal of 2, but it goes 2, 3, 5, 6. So only 4 and 1 is not an option. Don't know if that was always the thing. Virtus Praetors are taken in 3 units, and I know I saw before that changed. I don't know. I believe they used to be able. I think Lane ran those in bigger squads before. I can't remember if he just ran them in 3-mans, but well, now they're 3-man. No touch to Mechanicus. Good to see there. Man, they didn't touch the Titans. My Warlord Titan still sitting at 3,500 points. I can't take him to a tournament, man. 3,500 points for that guy. Still up there. Can't take him to a GT. Aeldari. So Aeldari, nothing went down. Nothing at all. Nothing went down. They're still there, but the Night Spinner went up and Wraithguard went up. Forge Worlds on them all stayed the same. Agents of the Imperium, no changes there. Everything stayed the same. Astra Militarum, the Manticore went up. Sorry, guys. Black Templar. Crusader Squad went up. Hellbrick went up. Chaplain went up. And I was talking with Zach. He said it really didn't change his list that much. So Templars are still going to be scary, and we'll still be seeing them. No change to Blood Angels. Chaos Demons. I can't even break down what all this means. The interesting thing is I'm seeing a lot of the teal, which means that the points went down. And considering that there was the changes where you have to take now a mark, you can't take more non-battle line units of a mark than you have of battle line units in a detachment. So if you're trying to ally demons, you have to take one battle line unit in order to take the non. So I was thinking about taking a Bloodthirster with my World Eaters. I would be forced to take at least a squad of World Bloodletters at 10 guys at 120 points. And the Bloodthirster himself is untouched at 320. So that's I get it and I don't. I mean, if you want these guys to be able to ally, I feel like it was okay before. We didn't see it that much, but there's probably some silly combinations that really break the mold of it, like the Changeling and stuff like that. So, but a lot of the points did drop on a lot of things. So there is something to be said there about being able to make this happen. Like a lot of the points dropped on most everything except for Nurglings and Blue Scribes or Scribes went up in points. Chaos Knights, everything went down except for the War Dog Brigand. Again, this is probably because they were getting allied in every other Chaos army under the sun. So the Brigand is going to cost you a little more. You'd still take them. It's going to cost you a little more. Chaos Space Marine, Accursed Cultist, Chaos Lord, Chosen, Forge Fiend, Obliterators, Warp Talons, Dark Commune all went up in point. The Eye of Zench detachment enhancement went up in points. And the Khorne Lord of Skulls dropped in points. Good for him. He's only 450 points and is still going to be staying on most shelves. But there has been Chaos just being able to do too much in the game. So I feel like this is the attempt to just kind of reduce Chaos's overall footprint. So we'll see how that plays out and see how that does. I'm still waiting to sit down and talk with my buddy Josh, who's a big avid Chaos player, and get his thoughts on it, and I'll come back and talk about those soon. Dark Angels, everything that I've seen in here just dropped in points, which scares me because they're about to see a release here soon. Dark Angels are just that one detachment that sneaks its way into that top spot and just becomes, it's just such a dark horse that you don't even see them coming. And suddenly a couple of Dark Angel armies hit and they're just, you just can't move them. They just don't die. So get ready. Dark Angels are coming very soon. Death Guard. Plague Marines went up. Plague Bruce Crawler went up. Seems like the PVC is always going up. But Typhus, Death Shrouds, Foated Blow Drone, Lord of Virulence all went down. So the Death Shroud, that's one's interesting. You know, 6 models at 240 ain't bad. They're really tough. So that's kind of cool to see. Plague Marines went up in points. It's kind of sad. I mean, I liked seeing Plague Marines. Hopefully, Death Guard players, it didn't hurt you too much. Death Watch is untouched. Drakari, for the most part, things went down, except for the Void Raven Bomber is the only thing that went up. You got a plane that's actually seeing play. Okay, but everything else went down. Okay, cool. Dark Eldar definitely needs some help. GSC, Gene Stealer Call, just pure strain went down. Not too much of a change there. Gray Knights, again, no change except for the Livy going up 10 points. Imperial Knights, everything dropped in points. Everything, the enhancements didn't change. The Certus Knight at Tropos, the Knight Gallant, and the Armiger Warglaive are the only things that did not get touched. Everything went down, so hopefully that will help Imperial Knights. We're looking at some stuff like Canis Rex is down to 435. Castellan's still a whopping 525. Night Crusader at 445. You got Paladin at 425. Gallant at 400, which is untouched. So it's still pricey, but hopefully that helps. League of Votann. League of Votann went the other direction. They went up in points. Sagittar increased in points. Hearthguard went up in points. Thunderkin went up in points. Not sure I really agree with that. Votann have been kind of underrepresented. They did jump up a little. They jumped up a lot in the recent Meta Watch. So there's that. I guess it's a little too much, but I mean, I would like to see those guys get rolling again. Still seems like the hackathon needs some work. Orcs, Knobs, Squig Hogs, and Trucks went up. A bunch of other stuff went down. Orcs have been very strong in the meta right now, and I think this is just going to strengthen them even more, especially with a lot of things going down in points. It's going to be very interesting to see what new Orc armies are going to be coming out. Space Marines. Space Marines got hit more on the data sheets. Not being a full-fledged Marine player, need to get Lane out here for this one to talk about all that stuff. I'm going to see if we can't get his thoughts and opinions out here on this soon. But for the most part, aggressors went up. Inceptor squads went up. Centurion Devastators went up, which were the popular choices at the time. And a couple other things went down in price, like intercessor squads, heavy intercessor squads. You know, a 10-man heavy intercessor is now 200 points. I think we're going to see a lot more of those. I mean, that's good value right there. Wow. Redemptor, Whirlwind went up. Scouts went up. Redemptor Dread went up. And yeah, so some of those surprised me. The Redemptor, I didn't see there very much of that. A Whirlwind you really had to build into, but okay. Space Wolves completely untouched. Not a thing. No points, nothing there. Tau, the Crisis battle suits went up because, of course, why they're one of the most popular choices and some of the best that they can bring to the table. Vespids, Riptide, Crisis Battlesuit Enforcer, those all went down. So, Riptides, seeing more of them maybe soon. Thousand Suns, untouched. Tyranids, I can't even digest this. Pun intended for Tyranids. Can't digest this. The Neurolictor, Gargoyles, Death Leaper, Pyrovores, all going up in points. Then you got Toxicrene and Norn Assimilator and all these other things just dropping. It's all over the place. Tyranids definitely need some love. So hopefully those point drops will really help them to be able to run some of these detachments and maybe get them a little more love, because for a fresh new book, it's kind of tough. World Eaters, 8-bound, up. Exalted, up. Exalted 8-bound. Lord of Skulls, hey, he's down in points. Still sitting on the shelf. Karn, up to 100 points. Okay. Master of Executions, up to 100 points. Okay. I understand why those guys hit really hard. Forge Fiend, down. That's what I was. Forge Fiend, got it. I want to go with the World Eater stuff so bad. So it's just tough. I wish they had more access to some stuff, but they're still kind of an infant faction. I feel like they need Terminators, not World Eater Terminator Squad. Like, they need the butchers, I believe they were called. So there's definitely needs some love there. Definitely needs some work. But hopefully when it comes their turn for Codex. So that's really about everything. A lot is going to be changed. A lot's going to develop in the next couple months. You know, a lot of stuff we can theorize as much as we want about how some of these changes are going to happen. But until we start putting this out on the table and actually seeing the effect of some of these things, like the Grey Knights and the Dread Knight weapons, Aeldari and what Aeldari can't do now, what they're restricted to, it's going to be interesting. All in all, I'm not disappointed with the changes. Personally, I didn't really get hurt that bad. My librarian goes up 10 points. Not a big deal. My Dread Knights got stronger. Cool. I have weapons. The AdMech didn't get touched, so I can still invest and work on time with them. And the Necrons really didn't get touched either. I'm looking forward to moving in and working on some different detachments. Hypercrypt is still very strong. I don't think that Hypercrypt is busted. I think that it's just the meta needs to change and adjust it, which is one of the reasons I'm not going too heavy into Hypercrypt, because I think the meta is going to be able to adjust to that style of play, and we're going to see some changes. So I think it's the next level with Necrons is not necessarily the world of Hypercrypt. It's what is the Necron world after Hypercrypt, or what is the next evolution for Hypercrypt. And that's going to be critical for Hypercrypt's competitive survivability, especially when a lot of armies are going to be looking at them now. So, wow, that's a lot. That's a lot. I mean, for just what all can happen in a night from these balanced data slates, it can really be a lot. So there's my reviews. That's my opinion, my reaction to the balanced data slates. Let me know in the comment section what you guys think. What are some combos I missed? I guarantee I missed a bunch. There are combinations or changes or impacts to the game that I may have missed. I'm sure there has been a bunch. This is what I've digested from today. And I got some models to go paint because I got an army to get ready to go to here on the channel here pretty soon. So, all right, guys, thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you again soon.